Mike Renner just dropped a brand new 2026 NFL mock draft, so I am here to review it. Let's jump right into this. Mike is a friend of the show, an amazing guy. I've had the opportunity to be able to bring him on the show, but also talk to him several times outside. Thank you again to Mike for all those experiences, all the guidance. And I saw CBS dropped a new mock draft. I'm like, all right, gonna kind of have to review this one. And then I saw it was Mike, and I'm like, perfect. This is a live reaction. Blow my face is my board. If you see an asterisk next to someone's name, that means that they're going to drop. Is this predictive? No, these are just the players I like in the order that I like them. John Mateer has a plus because he's injured, and that's a pre-injury grade. So I'm still working on getting guys up to date. I'm right now working with the tape that I have, so I'm excited to be able to get everything finalized. But if you guys do want to see all my evaluations, it's over on the Patreon. And for guys like Malachi Lawrence, who I love to death, Keith Abney, who I love to death, who did not make my positional rankings videos, I'm making videos exclusively for them within the next week that ends up breaking down exactly why I think about them the way I do. Let's jump right into this. Again, live reaction. Huge fan of Mike. And so, again, this is going to be super fun. Not really on the same tier as some of the other ones that I'll try to rip apart and have a good time. This is something that, Mike knows football even better than I do. And I mean, I'm saying even better, like I am the guru, but Mike is a fantastic IQ brain in football. And, there's always something to learn about it. But number one, Fernando Mendoza goes to the Browns. And I was talking about this yesterday on my 2-rounder, which you guys can go feel free to check out right now. Fernando Mendoza easily is making a very, very strong push for that number one spot. And, definitely makes a ton of sense. He's somebody who's operating now, going from Cal to Indiana. You're seeing him go from, a little bit more of a warmer weather environment to something that's going to be a little bit more gritty. So I'm excited to see as the weather ends up getting worse, how he ends up responding. Because in the AFC North, you aren't playing in rainbows, butterflies, and sunshine all the time. So definitely excited to see that for him, but he's done a fantastic job so far. Well worth that number one pick. Again, if you really think about Ruben Bain as somebody who's a true number one pick, then, you could try to justify it there based on, depending on what guys you think are coming out in this class, how deep it is. Could end up doing that. I think this is the much smarter move. At number two, speaking of the man, Ruben Bain Jr. goes at number two. Here are my criticism about Ruben Bain. And again, I really like him. He is great as a blue chip player. To me, he's an edge one. If you see players in blue, that means that they're supposed to be like a number one at their position. Does that mean they'll get the opportunity to do so? Not the case always with guys like Malachi Lawrence, Caleb Tiernan. I don't necessarily believe that they're going to have that opportunity. But at the same time, I think that if given the right opportunity, that's the way they should be able to perform. But Ruben Bain, fantastic player. My two concerns with him is one, overall, endurance. I do think that there are points where you see the burst, the acceleration, the power. I mean, the power is ridiculous. But with Ruben, something that does kind of bother me is down to down, you can see that he does have a little bit of the endurance issue. It's not 100% every single rep. And maybe he is putting 100%, but the applied athleticism does not equal every single time unless you're talking about strength. This guy is an absolute menace on every play. I'm just talking about the speed, the acceleration. It does feel like there are some times where he gets a little bit tired on the field, but I do think he should get to 270. I think if you shed 5 pounds of fat, you're golden. I mean, that's how close he is to being probably the best player in the entire class. And Tennessee would absolutely be a great place for him to land. So I'm very happy with this selection here. At number 3, we have Peter Woods going to the Dolphins. And Peter Woods still has been really solid. I believe he has a 19+% pass rush win rate at the moment, and true pass rush win rate, I should say. Doing a really solid job. Again, the whole entire defense as a whole has not necessarily been where it should be. And the funny thing is that guys like Peter Woods, Avion Terrell, they're not the reason for it failing. I do want Peter Woods to, right now, he's graded as my number one defensive interior. He's getting an updated grade very soon. He's actually the next guy who I'm going to be, updating as of how he's done over the first couple weeks. But, with my eyes, he still does a fantastic job. But I do want to see him, especially as a top 3, selection in this, really end up getting back to the dominance portion, because one elite defensive interior can make that big of a difference. I mean, you affect obviously the majority of runs between the tackles, and then obviously as a pass rusher, you can end up destroying the inside of the pocket, which in my opinion, is even more valuable than, collapsing one side of it. So Peter Woods, if he ends up getting back to the player that we know him to be, like the flashes he has, if they become more consistent, this dude's an absolute superstar. And what we are blessed with this year with him and Christian Miller, which I have an asterisk next to Christian Miller's name. I need to take that out, but because he did get updated for his grade today. But both these guys, extremely strong, very strong players. And so if you do think that building from the trenches out is a smart strategy for a rebuilding franchise, which I do, and especially because if you look at history, rebuilding franchises like to focus on either going balls to the wall with something like a quarterback pick or something a lot safer with a offensive or defensive line pick. This lines up with reality. At number 4, Garrett Nussmeier goes to the New Orleans Saints. His father is the offensive coordinator. So I do think that this was something I talked about yesterday as well in the mock draft. I think that familiarity and comfortability and understanding your quarterback's strengths and weaknesses and how to, assuming Doug is of that caliber, because he's done a good job so far this year with Spencer Rattler, at least making him have some moments where we at least question how much they need a quarterback. So I do think Doug should be able to stay around, but, you need to be able to put your quarterback in the right situations. If you have a smart enough play designer, and then you have an innate understanding or a very deep understanding, not innate, a very deep understanding of how your quarterback operates, which the father of his son probably should, then you're going to be able to have a system that sets your quarterback up for success. So I'm not fully sold on Garrett Nussmeier. Now, he is noticeably higher than he was starting out the year. Garrett Nussmeier, to me, is worth that fringe 1 at the moment. And when it comes to the system fit, this is just perfection. People say, oh, you shouldn't go after, it would be something that is no longer objective decisions. It's very subjective decision making when it's your son. I get that. At the same time, when you're asking to get fired by Mickey Loomis for being an absolute idiot, then there's maybe some other issues that would end up arising that makes Doug do the objective thing, which at the same time, Garrett has so much talent that there might not need to be this argument between does he make the right decision because it's his son. So Garrett Nussmeier, the logical pick there, the pick I make. Jordan Tyson, wide receiver at Arizona State, goes to the Carolina Panthers at pick 5. So this is very intriguing. Not a pick I would make over Caleb Downs. But at the same time, Liggett hasn't fully worked out. And I am in the mindset of getting Carolina another weapon. At 5, it feels a little bit rich, but Jordan Tyson, Tetairoa McMillan, that is a nasty duo. Tyson, to me, the more I see the way he just moves, he's just so damn fluid. Like, I don't know. Like, he is just a dominant separator. And then he also has really good hands. But, of course, with Tetairoa McMillan, like, we'll see how, he continues to grow and develop. Had a little bit of a struggle week with a couple of drops this past week. I think that's more of the exception, not the rule with him. He's shown to be a really solid wide receiver. And Jordan Tyson, if you want to give whatever quarterback's going to be there, no excuses, this is the way to do it. So Jordan Tyson, the selection there. Caleb Downs, safety out of Ohio State, goes at pick number 6. Love Caleb Downs, best player available. To me, I think that I'd prefer to go Spencer Fano, but I will see where Mike ends up taking Fano. Like, obviously, I have Fano sitting there at number 4 on my board, Downs at number 1. So regardless, you can end up, arguing, which way you want to go there. But I do love the idea of just getting, especially with a good offensive line coach, great offensive line talent. Again, I don't know where Mike is at with Fano at the moment. We'll see what happens, but you can't get mad at Caleb Downs. I'm just saying a position that I'd prefer. At number 7, the Jets go John Mateer, quarterback out of Oklahoma. I have LaNorris graded higher right now, but that is not updated for this year. Fun fact, it is not updated. So that's something where I don't know if it's going to drop to the point where Mateer would end up being QB1 or Mendoza. Again, I have not had the opportunity to watch Indiana and all 22. I've used my eyes. That's why I can talk about it. But I also want it to be fully informed and not start throwing grades out based on, something that I did not watch in the or at least with the level of scrutiny and the level of quality that I owe you guys as well as myself with this analysis. But John Mateer, fantastic player. He's my number 7 player, and if he gets fully healthy and continues showing out, this is a perfectly reasonable and solid move. And number 8, CC Maui Goa goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. So I do see it as offensive tackle. So let's read this. Struggling early on with DJ Glaze being part of the problems at right tackle. So I am more of the mindset that Maui Goa is a guard. So let's just, in my opinion, if I'm going to be going after a right tackle here, it would be Spencer Fano. That's my mindset. So if I were looking at right tackle here, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Fano to me actually is a really good fit. And if you believe Maui Goa is a top end right tackle, then this makes sense, right? So again, I know for a fact there are some sites where I know they just start putting bullshit picks because they don't understand what they're talking about. With Mike, the reason why I'm like not being an ass where I'm like, oh, you think CC Maui goes a tackle? Like, I know Mike actually believes what he believes because he watches it with his own eyes. Like, he's a very smart guy, so I give a lot more respect to what he says than maybe some of these people who I think create kind of garbage content for you guys to enjoy that part of me kind of tearing it apart. But this is not something I could tear apart because I know for a fact Mike's not putting out shit content. Like maybe some stuff I disagree with, but that doesn't mean it's crap, right? At number 9, TJ Parker, edge rusher out of Clemson, goes to the New England Patriots. I do think TJ has not performed at the level that that's kind of deserving of a top 10 pick. Now, I understand that all the potential is there. For me, I was definitely not very high on him coming into the year. Not saying I should take a victory lap on that. We're a couple weeks into the year. Clemson's in a very weird spot. I will be judging these players a lot on how much they grow over the year. Like Damani Jackson had some early struggles last year, ended up ending the year red hot. He's starting this year red hot, right? So I really do like to look at the trend more than anything. But TJ Parker, definitely a name that we'll be watching to see if his play continues to improve because so far it's been a little bit underwhelming. But edge rusher for the Patriots is far from a position that I would ever criticize. Definitely a position they should be looking at. For me, a dark horse would be that cornerback spot. Not saying it's a position that should take priority if you think an edge rusher is better, but it is something I still would like to throw out there as a true corner too. Having 2 corner ones just to me ends up solving an issue for the long haul. And especially since corners are getting more and more expensive and a lot of guys are pretty unreliable, getting somebody that you would believe in at that rate, maybe something that could end up, making a little bit more sense. But an edge rusher, by all means, makes logical sense. Number 10 for the Bears, Trevor Gooseby, offensive lineman. I do believe this is going to be him at tackle. I would need to kind of understand a little bit more why CC Mauigo is listed as a tackle versus Gooseby as an offensive lineman. When I watched Gooseby, I did not see that necessarily, but he has a ton of potential. He's shined big in big moments. I mean, I want to see the consistency there, but on the left tackle spot, absolutely is a position for the Bears to target. So I think that disagreeing with that, I think you should probably watch a couple more games. And again, I mean, I'm not the perfect example of this. I try my best to watch as much football as I possibly can because I'm obsessed with the game. But, I'll just say if you don't believe the Bears should be looking to upgrade their left tackle spot, watch some Bears games because it's kind of apparent. At number 11, we have the Cincinnati Bengals going Jermod McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee. I will say we'll see how he comes back from that ACL. It's not like a degenerative knee condition like Will Johnson. It's not like a spinal issue with Caleb Farley because somebody ended up mentioning Caleb Farley in terms of like why they'd be a little worried about Jermod McCoy. Completely different. This isn't like a genetic thing. Guys get ACL tears. It was just really bad timing in January for an ACL tear. I want to see how his speed ends up being. Like, for me, seeing the separation that was gained on drag routes, I don't think he was jogging on it. And if he is, I don't understand why you would jog versus drag routes. But I do think physicality-wise, he could mimic a little bit of what Leonard Moore brings, which Al Golden used to coach Leonard Moore. So I could see the physical build working really well in this system. Honestly, I wish they got Juju Brents when he ended up being cut. That would have been kind of fun, but topic for another day. Jermod McCoy, I would prefer him more as a second round guy based on the questions around that ACL. Going to not have a full resume because of that. We'll see though. I mean, I definitely like I like the thought process behind it, maybe just not the spot at 11. Number 12, we have Dante Moore, quarterback out of Oregon, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's my problem with this, because I love Dante Moore. I love the idea of quarterback to the Steelers. The draft's in Pittsburgh. It makes sense. I don't trust us to develop him. That's the only problem. Like, Steelers are my team. I just can't remember the last time we properly developed a quarterback to be a legitimate high-end talent, especially one with a lot of talent like this. Like, Dante Moore is not your stereotypical high-floor quarterback. Like, Will Howard is the perfect example of what has had some success on the Steelers so far, or we've imported it. Now, if Aaron Rodgers wants to stick around and end up being more of like an advisor or, a quarterback coach, this is going to work beautifully, right? You look at the arm talent, you look at the mobility, and it's definitely something that at least we're now getting some exposure to with Aaron Rodgers, even though it's a much smaller version of what he used to be. We're at least getting exposure to higher level arm talent, higher level processing, and, that's something that you could get with Dante Moore. But I do have some worries as to whether we can really reach the spot that I want us to reach to get someone like Dante Moore and bring him to where we all know he could be. At number 13, we got Keldrick Falk, defensive lineman out of Auburn. A very, very solid player. The definition of reliable. And to be honest, on Dallas, I mean, the one thing that we're kind of saying is, dude, this defensive line is ass. You don't need to go for a home run right now. It's not very hard to please people with some consistency. So even though I would maybe try to go after a little bit more flash and a little bit more excitement, I don't think Keldrick Falk is a bad option by any way, shape, or form. He is a very good player, and he fits the physical archetype of what the Cowboys go for, which is these bigger style of edge rushers. So I do think he would end up mimicking a little bit of what DeMarcus Lawrence once was in this defense. And, again, go for the flash with some of the DPRs in this class. But, this is definitely something where, the more I'm looking at it, the more I like it. So it's definitely something maybe in trades, mock drafts, if I want to trade back or something, is a great way for the Cowboys to, build some extra capital and then also end up continuing to construct their team in a way that makes sense. Number 14, Carnell Tate, wide receiver at Ohio State, goes to the Seattle Seahawks. This team does need a little bit more excitement in their wide receiver core. You got Horton that's doing really well for the fact that obviously he was drafted way too low. Horton is a fantastic player. I literally said ankles fear him. So, we haven't even really seen that aspect of his game to the same degree as what it was pre-ACL tear at Colorado State. But Carnell Tate's definition of balanced, and it worked once before with a kid from Ohio State and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I could definitely see it potentially working here as well. I like the idea, maybe a little bit early for me, even though I think Carnell Tate's a very solid receiver. Maybe I would look at those round 2 options if I end up, sacrificing Carnell Tate and getting Chris Bell. We'll see Chris Bell might be taken in the first round. Obviously, I don't know. This is a live reaction, but, someone who has at least similar height to where you can end up molding a role appropriately. I think that maybe I would try to address, a top end edge rusher here. I'm trying to think of like how I could criticize this based on like the guys who are available, how I would end up addressing it. Mansour Delane, definitely somebody who I would end up trying to target for that boundary corner spot, or Keith Abney, depending on, the style of corner that they want in terms of their vision on the boundary. But Carnell Tate would be far from something that's bad. Again, he's just a well-rounded receiver, similar to Emeka coming out last year. Getting someone who is just very consistent, very solid. Like, you can end up having a wide receiver 1 just be an elite wide receiver 2. And that's kind of what I think Carnell Tate could be, is that like really solid wide receiver 2. And you already have your 1. So you don't have to have Carnell Tate carry the workload that a number 14 pick sometimes does. At 15, Spencer Fano, right tackle out of Utah, goes to the Los Angeles Rams. Amazing fit. Obviously, if he's here, I'd be parading this in the street. So I'm curious. Fano is the best run blocker in the draft class, with the kind of athleticism fit in Sean McVay's offense. Would love to hear from Mike, and maybe I'll just message him about this, why Fano would fall this far. I do think that tackles are a premium in this class in terms of depth, especially the right tackle side. There are a lot of teams, in my opinion, that should be at least open to going to the right tackle spot. And, Fano has shown to be a really big contributor probably from day one. So would love to hear a little bit more about that. Number 16, Colton Hood, defensive back out of Tennessee, goes to the Cleveland Browns. Definitely would end. Jermod McCoy, I think, hasn't performed as well as Colton Hood has this year. Colton has transformed his game. Right now, Colton Hood is sitting at Is he already on here? I swear. I thought I put him as a 76, but okay, 75 and a quarter. He's right there in he's in the starter range for me. And again, there are some players with those asterisks outside of Christian Miller that will be dropping accordingly, because I do think that initially I overrated them a little bit, and that's part of the game. I mean, you end up saying how you feel. You end up like watching a little bit more and you say, well, maybe I should end up dropping him a little bit. But Colton Hood has taken a huge step up, and he's a fantastic player for the Browns. Getting a long-term option on the boundary or in the nickel if you really want Colton Hood, because I think he has flexibility to go into both. Smart move. Smart move right there. A little bit early for my opinion, but again, something that I totally understand. At 17, the Colts go Mateo Uiagalelei, edge rusher out of Oregon. This is the first one I'm pushing back on, because first off, I don't think Mateo has done a good enough job this year to garner a first. Secondly, I would say like with Latu, I mean, I feel like it's a little bit missing out on my boy JT Tuimalau. I think JT's only had 5 reps so far this year, and it's kind of what Mateo brings, but I feel like at a lower level of production on a down-by-down basis. So that's the first one that I'm going to push back on. I do think that we're kind of underselling JT Tuimalau here. I understand the idea of going after edge in terms of building up your depth underneath JT, but I do feel like we're underselling JT a little bit much by instantly kind of throwing him into a rotation here with a player, in my opinion, who is inferior. At number 18, Jeremiah Love, running back out of Notre Dame, goes to the Houston Texans. It's a pick I've made a billion times. Makes sense. It's a way to really improve the offense, take the stress off CJ Stroud, take the stress off the offensive line that's not able to pass block. Makes sense. At number 19, this is also a pick that I have made. Caleb Lamu, tackle out of Utah, going to the Arizona Cardinals. Going to obviously use him at right tackle, but obviously somebody that I've had a very strong affinity for, somebody who I think would work well with the Cardinals. I'm not the type to really force guys to switch sides. I do think it's a little bit of arrogance to just think guys can, switch willy-nilly. But at the same time, when you see a talent that is like worth a pick that is higher, and there's not really a right tackle that is in range, I think that it's proper to say, Caleb Lamu would end up making some sense there. At number 20, Avion Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson, goes to the Minnesota Vikings, just off a week where we saw Isaiah Rodgers have a 99.9 PFF game. This would even strengthen the reason for them to go after Avion Terrell more. Even if you bring back Isaiah Rodgers, maybe the boundary cornerback 2 spot could end up getting a little bit more juice here with Avion Terrell. And you might not have the height, but 5'3" and an attitude has some good advantages to it if you have a good safety core. And I think Avion Terrell would be a good addition there regardless. 21, Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver out of USC, goes to the Denver Broncos, and very consistent wide receiver, dangerous at all levels of the field. I mean, he is just somebody who is punchy. He has elite change of direction skills. He'd be a fun player to have. I mean, we were mocking Emeka Egbuka to this team, who didn't have crazily different measurables, but again, talking about that consistency factor, I think Sean Payton's going to love it, especially with the flexibility of Mekhi Lemon. I personally, if I were sitting here, I'd go Kenyon Sadiq all day, every day, but Mekhi Lemon is far from a bad alternative. Vega Ione at number 22, guard out of Penn State, goes to Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially with the season-ending injury to I guess Malk is Malk the right guard? I'm tripping right now. Left guard could always be upgraded. I know this is what they're talking about right here. So, I definitely like taking Vega Ione. I do it normally in round number 2, but this dude's an absolute mauler. I would say size-wise, it's a little bit of a departure from the Graham Bartons and the Graham Barton style of the world, which I'm trying to remember what Malk was. I thought Malk was undersized as well. That would only be my pushback. If he is, then that's something that I would say maybe organizationally they would go after a different build there, which there's a lot of guys in this class who have a little bit of a lighter frame. At number 23, we have Quincy Rhodes Jr., edge rusher out of Arkansas, going to the Washington Commanders. He's been doing a fantastic job this year. My big problem with Quincy Rhodes, and this popped up in the Memphis game, not a fan of him as a run defender so far. I mean, he was getting drugged by a quarterback. Technically, the 390-pound defensive interior was too, but just got to put that out there. Not a huge fan of that, but a really good edge rusher there in terms of the production this year, and definitely somebody I could see on the watch list for the Commanders. At number 24, Connor Luce, center out of Auburn, goes to the Niners. And, I think that he is going to be somebody who is just rock solid, reliable. And, when you can end up bolstering the interior because they have Connor Colby there right now, not at center. I think he's playing one of the guard spots. But regardless, I think Connor Liu, whether you insert him as a center or a guard, I think you're going to end up doing a fine job there. At number 25, Josh Hoover, quarterback out of TCU, goes to the Los Angeles Rams. For me, I'm not fully sold on Hoover to that degree. I actually liked him a lot as a top 10 quarterback, I believe, coming into the year. So I do have love for Josh Hoover, even though I'm an SMU Mustang fan, alumni. But, he is definitely somebody who has some really good potential. I just don't really see it as first round. Cade Piper. I actually ended up mentioning this guy on our most recent stock report, guard out of Iowa. This guy's been doing a fantastic job this year. So I'm excited to dig into the tape. I know if Mike ended up doing that and he thinks of him as a potential one, I know this is the range where you start taking shots on some guys that you really want to give some credit to, but definitely an intriguing name to watch. All right. Good to know. But this is somebody who probably would. Are they going to slot him in at center? Because I do think center could be there. Undersized, limited playing strength out of a position at guard round. He'd be the perfect center. There we go. So I was like, okay. I had to double check there with my eyeballs. But, upgrading at center, if he ends up working out there, would be awesome. Caden Green, interior offensive lineman, technically tackle right now out of Missouri, goes to the Lions at 27. I just would prefer to let the guards develop and then get a center personally, but I can understand the vision. He's a high floor player, ends up fitting with the anchor and stuff that I saw with Christian Mahogany, but at a higher level. So I can see the vision. Anthony Lucas, edge rusher out of USC, goes at pick number 28 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Really good quick pass rush win rate. And pass rush win rate in general, true pass rush win rate is really, really good. I think it's in the 40% range. For someone who's 285, he moves incredibly fluidly. He looks thinner than Ruben Bain. And technically, yeah, he has an extra, I believe, couple inches on him at 6'5". But, 2 inches of height, 10 pounds does not look. Anthony Lucas looks a little bit leaner than Ruben Bain. So, I'm not saying that's the comparison, but I'm just saying this guy's producing and he looks really, really athletic. So I'm excited to get some USC defensive tape and get him graded. At number 29, the Eagles get the best pick of the draft. Kenyon Sadiq, tight end out of Oregon. Highly doubt he gets here, but at the same time, if he somehow finds a way, this is the perfect pick for the Eagles. Aggressive blocker, elite after the catch, just a monster. At pick 30, my boy Caden McDonald goes here to the Dallas Cowboys. I've been trying to get the Cowboys a nice plug in the nose, and Caden McDonald's exactly that. He's productive as a pass rusher, productive as a run defender, and he has a great build. This is just a perfect guy to continue bolstering your interior defensive line with. At number 31, the Bills go Sonny Styles. Old but gold, a pick that I made myself several times. Get a high-quality linebacker that has a great frame. And last but not least, we have David Bailey, edge rusher / linebacker out of Texas Tech, formerly Stanford. This dude's just definitely a high-end player, just really, really solid in terms of the high IQ, very proficient as a pass rusher. I don't think he's bad as a run defender either. I know that much more of a designated pass rusher to the next level. I personally think that David Bailey has more to his run defense kit than what people give him credit for. Because for me, I was a big doubter of his run defense ability at Stanford. And in that last year there, I really do think he took a step up. And maybe that ends up translating to the NFL. Maybe it doesn't. We'll see about that. But that's going to be the video. Thank you again so much for watching, showing the love that you always do. I'll see you later.